Derek here, Rural Investing. Last video, we talked about a few different things, but one of the topics was how to use a 0% credit card, and I had mentioned maybe I would do a video on that. And that's the video that we're going to do today. Turns out it's not as common knowledge as I would have thought. To me, when I see 0% on a credit card, I think, oh, that's free time and money. I want to take advantage of that in a disciplined and knowledgeable way. And both of those things, hopefully you get out of this video, at least to some degree. I guess I have been exposed to these opportunities for a number of years. It was really how my parents paid for my college. We didn't have a lot of money growing up, and it was time to go to school. And my mom had actually been in college and didn't quite finish her degree. I believe she was a couple English classes shy of becoming an accountant. And so she had gone through all the business classes and the money management, and taxes. And so she was pretty familiar with how a company might manage its cash flow. And one of the things that she learned was that, hey, regular people can do this too, right? We can delay our payments and we can make money on our expenses before we send them out. And so she saw these credit cards and went, oh, here's my opportunity to pay for college without taking out a bunch of loans, without racking up interest. Excuse me. And so I went to a state school and commuted for most of it. And she was able to take these credit cards and put my college on it and my books on it and spread this payments out for years. I think it was over a decade, paying 0%, maybe a 3% transfer fee here or there, but essentially minimal interest was paid, and she had a decade to pay these college loans. And so we were a decently close family, I think, and we always talked about the finances and the money situation. And so as this was happening, she made me aware of sort of what was going on, so that, hey, be a little bit careful. If you can get a used book, go ahead and do that. And in what ways could I participate? Because we were borrowing for me to go. And so I guess, at 17, 18 years old, I was introduced to this idea of cash flowing my expenses, right? The idea that I am going to purchase something and pay for it later. And that's where the first point comes in, which is discipline. These 0% credit cards are a tool to make your life better. They're not money that you have to spend more on luxuries or pleasure items, right? You can't go and buy new clothes with these or brand new shoes. The purpose for this video, what these are, as I said, I mentioned that they're a tool, is that instead of having to pay at the immediate time of service or within 29 days if you use a credit card, you have the term of this credit card to pay back the money that you spend for free, 0%, right? And so if you have a monthly budget of, let's say, $2,000, right? And that's where you buy your clothes and your food and, your supplies for improving the house or toys for the kids, right? You spend about $2,000 a month, right? And then at the end of that credit card term, that 29 days, you have to pay that credit card off, or you pay 20, 25, 29% interest, which is crazy. So you have to make that payment. Or you're afraid of credit cards, right? And you pay in cash. And you don't collect your 1, 2, 3% of points, right? Which people who use credit cards take. And so you're paying a little bit more every month by not using a credit card. And so to me, the only correct way to pay, or the number one way to pay really, is 0% for a long period of time on a credit card. You accumulate those points, 1, 2, 3%. I pick cashback cards. I don't think that would be a surprise if you had to guess. So I get a discount on the goods that I'm purchasing anyways. And then I have these cards with terms, 12 months, 15 months, 18 months. My favorite one, Citi Diamond Preferred Plus, is 21 months before you have to pay the full amount back for 0%. And so this is called cash flow. And so the whole point of that is that I get the thing that I need right now. I don't have to pay for it later, and that leaves me this pot of cash. You're already making it, you already have it, you're just used to sending it out. And instead you take it and you purchase an asset, right? Not a debt, not a better quality of life item, an asset. That asset could be a high interest savings account, right? My SoFi account, I think, was paying 3.6% before the Fed's cut rates today. Over a 21-month term, let's say you get a $13,000 limit, you're spending $2,000 a month. By the time you spend that $2,000, hit your $13,000 limit, you're going to make in that high interest on that same amount of money, maybe $600-ish, right? And that $600 is yours, right? You've put all that $13,000 into a savings. It's made your roughly 3.5%. At the end of that 20 months, you take out what's left on the credit card after your minimum payments, and you are left with your interest. You have done nothing to your life except cash flow with a 0% credit card, and you make about $600. To me, that's an opportunity everybody should be doing. As long as you can manage the minimum payments on that credit card, again at 0%, you can just use a high interest savings account and you'll make $600 or so, right? And that's great. Except that minimum payment on $13,000 is going to be, varies 1 to 3% of the balance. That city card I mentioned, I think would be about $130, right? So can you take $130 out of your $2,000 a month budget? And the answer to that is it depends on who you are, right? And so let's say you can't. Or let's say you want to make a little bit more than $600, right? This is where some of the other things we've talked about come into play, right? Income generating assets, right? Things that have relatively steady price, right? Something that if the market does go down during these terms, it'll come back up at a reasonable time, but also something that will generate income that will mostly cover that minimum payment. And so you don't have to do anything with your monthly budget other than have discipline, right? Something like a QQQI from NEOS. I think I've mentioned SPYI before. QQQI is the NASDAQ 100. A super common investment vehicle would be QQQ in your 401k, for example, right? Or there's another fund that I like. Again, do your own research, due diligence here. This is not financial advice. Entertainment purposes only, is something called MAGGI. It's the Magnificent Seven stocks. It's the biggest stocks in the market, the ones that have seen all the gains these last 5 or 10 years, right? That's something that yields north of 30% and has had some ability to maintain its price. You're not worried about it dropping 50% and not recovering over time. So these things would generate enough income to cover that minimum payment if you needed it, and still put money in the bank for you or to cover or to generate that income. And so something like a QQQI in that same scenario is the high yield interest rate. That's going to make you something like $2,500, 4 times as much as what you would get as the high interest savings account, right? And so this is where you get into that situation where people go, well, hey, they live paycheck to paycheck. They must not be responsible enough to understand finances. They're just going to get themselves in trouble. What if the market drops 20, 30, 40, 50%, right? And this is where the knowledge comes into play. If you don't max out all of these cards, don't open 3, 4, 5 of them at once, right? Pick one, right? Let's try it out. You pick one, you make that payment, you're going to get a credit check, your balance is going to go up, your credit score is going to dip. But as you make those minimum payments and your overall debt comes down month after month after month for 21 months, you're going to see your credit score, all likelihood, recover, right? And companies, credit card companies, are going to see that you're reliable. And this means they want to compete for your dollars, right? And that means you're going to get more of these offers. So if the market drops 50% and you're in something like MAGGI, M-A-G-Y, and it yields 34% of the 7 biggest companies in the world, and I own it, I would tell you it seems to be fairly sustainable. Again, do your own research. And you're making 30% on that $13,000, right? And you're easily covering that minimum payment. The market goes down 50%, so now it's only yielding 17% on your purchase price. It doesn't really matter, because you're still covering that minimum payment. You take that credit card and those other offers there, the credit card companies that are now competing for your business, they're going to offer you a 3% transfer fee for an additional 12 months, a 5% transfer fee for 18 months, right? And so you might pay 5%, but you're paying that 5% over 18 months, not a year, right? So your effective rate is well below 5. And you take that, after you do it, 13,000, you've made your minimum payments, you got 11,000. You roll it over for that 3 to 5%, and you wait for the market to recover. You are still making 17% if the market drops 50%. And so you've bought yourself another whole year. And as we've talked about on some of the other videos, the market goes up and to the right over time, right? There's no question about that. And it doesn't mean that the economy won't crash, but it means in all likelihood you can expect that price to recover the longer you wait. And as long as you're covering those minimum payments and being disciplined about that approach, there's really limited risk that you're going to have a problem with these credit cards while you're stacking up money. I think QQQI would make you like $2,500. Something like Maggie's going to make you close to $5,500 to $6,000 over that same time period. And again, this is on your budgeted money every month. You're not putting extra into this. This is I don't even have $5. Now you have up to maybe $6,000 if you can wait out that 21 months and the market is just simply flat. And so I think it's something that everybody should know and understand. And I don't remember learning this in high school, but I did, however, learn it from my mother, who dropped out of college going for an accounting degree, right? And that's how that knowledge came to us. And that led me down this weird path of actually looking up how safe investing is over your lifetime. Let's call it 18 to 77, 59 years versus college. And this is where I think education might have a hole in terms of high school and personal finances or home economics, some of these classes that don't really exist in a wide way anymore. Investing over a 59-year period has never had a negative result. If you do anything when you turn 18, it's to understand investing and particularly how to cash flow your expenses, because your expenses aren't going away. You just got to figure out how to pay them a little bit later so that you can make interest on the things that you must purchase, right? Conversely, something like it's 40% of people who start college drop out. The estimates varied, looked it up again. Something like 30% of people who drop out of college come out with debt, right? So let's break those two groups apart. As a millennial, I was told I have to go to college. It's the only way to get ahead. Turns out it worked for me, but it wasn't really good advice, right? So you go to college and you drop out, but you don't have debt, right? Situation A. You lost time, right? You didn't go to trade school. You didn't pick up an apprenticeship. You didn't start at a retail outlet where you could work up to assistant manager, store manager, making real money. But at least you don't have debt. You just lost, 1, 2, 3, 4 years, took a hit to your pride that could slow you down a little bit. But at least you didn't lose any money. You're just starting late. What if you went to school for 2 years, you got some of your liberal arts classes out of the way, but you took out debt that whole time? You come out, you have no asset, you have a debt, and you have these minimum payments stacking up, and you don't have those skills. You don't have that apprenticeship that's getting ready to turn into a journeyman. You didn't go to vocational school. You didn't work your way up. Now you're a cashier. You're stuck at home, getting depressed. And this was the reality for a lot of people. If the first priority was to understand how money worked, you would be in significantly better shape. You would have taken that debt for college and delayed those payments. You could have saved that cash and built up an asset. So if you did drop out and you invested in something like Maggie, you're sitting over there after 2 years with $10,000, $12,000, $13,000. You're able to make those payments on your loans, and you have some scratch over here to start a business, to hold yourself over while you do climb that ladder, starting at the cashier position. And that, I think, is what I'm trying to convey here. If you do anything in life, it should be to understand money and how to make your expenses work for you. And that's what a disciplined approach to a 0% credit card does. And the only thing that you need besides that one tool is the knowledge of how it works. And so hopefully you get something out of this video. Appreciate your time. I don't think I've mentioned it before, but if you wanted to like and subscribe, that would be fantastic. I'm also going to put a couple links in the description. I write a blog, which helps me do these videos. So I'll put a couple of posts, one about the college so you can actually see the numbers, and the other one about the 0% credit card. And feel free to read through or shoot me any messages. But again, if you find this valuable, please like and subscribe. I started a Substack as well. If you want to follow me over there, it's a little bit easier to manage the social media aspect of the communication, which is not a strong suit of mine. So thank you for your time, and I hope you come back.